What's up, everybody? Welcome to Floyd Street's Finest, a Louisville men's basketball podcast as part of the Field of 68 Media Network. I'm Jeff Greer, your host, your friend. Happy to be back with you after a little bit of a break. We've got a great guest lined up for you this week, and I actually interviewed him at the end of last week. Had to get new headphones, got a new microphone, and we are good to go for a new episode here with the introduction, much needed introduction. Marques Maybin, of course, played for U of L in the late 90s into the early 2000s. Wonderful guy, is now a show host here in town, has a great story and so many different anecdotes to share. So I made sure to ask him all about Denny Crum in particular, and some of his thoughts, of course, on the current team. That's what he does now. He's a host. He's got lots to talk about. So we talk at length about what he thinks this current team needs. He and I agree that I think an influx of athleticism would be good with maybe one more player. I still believe that Louisville probably needs another guard. I don't know that the staff is necessarily looking for another guard, but I think they need another guard just to give them a little bit, perhaps height and athleticism, because I think that would help a little bit more in terms of them being able to get up and down and play at the tempo that Chris Mack really likes to play his teams to play. Something that I was looking at earlier last week about Xavier that I think should show folks that he really does mean it. Chris Mack does want his teams to play at a higher tempo. His two best teams in terms of seeding and record, 28 and 6, I believe the 2015-16 season, and then 29 and 6, the team that got the 1 seed in the 2017-18 season before Mack came to Louisville, ranked 32nd and 62nd in the country in adjusted tempo, according to Ken Pomeroy's analytics, which means basically they had more possessions per game than just about 300 plus other teams in college basketball in one of those seasons, and about 290 of those teams in the other season. So they want to run. He wants them to get out and run, and I think getting another guard will help them do that. An explosive athletic guard, maybe with a little MFer in him. I've talked a lot about that on the radio and on this podcast. I think Louisville needs a player to either emerge on the current roster. I think Malik Williams maybe could be that guy, and then see if they can go out and recruit another one who can really be just a nasty guy. And I'm not talking about cheap or dirty player or anything like that. I'm just talking about a guy who has the attitude of, this is just going to get done and we are not losing this game. And I thought it was really interesting. We talked to Charles Minland a couple of weeks ago about his experiences playing against Gonzaga when he was out at San Francisco. And they always seem to have, according to Charles, a few players who had that mentality of just, we're going to do whatever it takes to win. And then, of course, speaking of Gonzaga this season, talking about Baylor beating Gonzaga in the national title game, Baylor seemingly had that in spades across the board with some of those guys, just complete MFers. And I mean that in a really complimentary way. You got to be able to bring some tenacity and some intensity to the floor if you want to have success and advance deep into the NCAA tournament, which, as we have talked about, season 4 for Chris Mack, it's got to be a good one. And he knows that. He's got high expectations for himself and for the program. And I think they are in need of one final piece, a guy who can kind of create a little bit, get out and run in fast break situations and create them, play downhill, and also have a little bit of that toughness and intensity to him. There could be guys on the roster. We have seen players develop mentalities over the course of their careers, and I think that it's possible that there's people on the roster who are like that, but I don't think it would hurt to go out and see if maybe there's someone else who they can get. As a reminder, make sure that you go on to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the Field of 68 Media Network's YouTube channel. That will allow you to look at all sorts of different great videos. We had a wonderful series of March Madness memories that we rolled out during the NCAA tournament. They're still fresh. They're still good. They're great memories, bring back great moments in college basketball history. And as I always say, make sure you rate and review this podcast, Floyd Street's Finest, If you're listening to it on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, and they have a rating mechanism, go ahead and give us a rating. It helps us be found by other people. It helps us show up in the algorithm. So that would be hugely helpful. And one last thing that I'll also add is, since January, I decided to start writing a Louisville men's basketball newsletter, something that I think hopefully adds to the conversation. I try to share what I am hearing. I try to evaluate and analyze film when I can and look at some things and see how they fit in with what Louisville's trying to do, where things are going well, what things work, what things haven't worked. And also get into recruiting, some stats. I especially get into stats and analytics because that's really been an interest of mine from the beginning of my fandom of basketball as a little kid. So I've always been into that, and I think it helps explain the game. Doesn't on 100% of the picture, but it does help explain some things along the way and why things might happen the way they do, all in that newsletter. So if you want to subscribe, it's $7 a month. You can update it every month if you want. You can get a yearly subscription for $75, which saves you, I should not have said that because now I've got to do math. I believe that saves you about $20 or so. That does not sound right, but saves you some money. I am an idiot for even bringing up a math equation after mentioning how much I like statistics. That was really stupid to then have to do multiplication by myself here staring into my computer screen. And also, if you really want something that's been super, super fun, and we've been doing it bi-weekly every other week, is you can get a $90 sixth-man plan subscription. And what that comes with, the extra couple of bucks, is a bi-weekly happy hour on Zoom. And hopefully eventually we'll be able to do it in person with me. And you guys can ask questions. We've had a regular group of folks come on. It's a lot of fun. And we can talk about all sorts of different things on there. I try to share some of my favorite stories over the years, both behind the scenes and things that I've written about or talked about, and also try to share some thoughts on different things that are going on, both with Louisville, but also in college basketball in general, men's college basketball. So give it a look, jeffgreer.substack.com, or you can always just follow me on Twitter. And whenever I tweet out the link, you can click through it there and see if you like it. That's all I've got. I've just emptied it all out there for you to let you parse through all of the instructions. This is a great conversation with Marques. He is a great storyteller. And I actually first met Marques back in, I think, 2014, when he was thinking about how or what his next steps were going to be as he continued to battle with his injuries and just trying to come back from the horrific motorcycle accident that he experienced. And I was blown away by his enthusiasm for life, his knowledge of different things, his great storytelling ability. And I really enjoyed writing about him, and something that stuck with me. And again, the conversation itself is great, so I feel like I'm babbling on here, but something that stuck with me was Marques used to go to Freedom Hall before the games, before the pregame shoot around. And he liked to go out barefoot so that he could feel the vibration of the basketball floor as he was dribbling a basketball and the ball was bouncing around. And that always just stuck with me. It just gave me chills saying that, that a person would be so in the moment and so appreciative of that moment that they would talk about that and that they would know to go experience that. And for the rest of us, we get so caught up and who's winning, who's losing, what the stats are, and all those other things that we kind of sometimes drain the life out of what is supposed to be fun, what is supposed to be interesting, what's supposed to be an experience. And hearing Marques describe it that way sticks with me now 7 years later after I talked to him for a story I wrote about him. So I'm so thrilled to welcome him to the podcast. I told him we would have him on a long time ago. It's long overdue. And I'm so happy to have this conversation with former Louisville player and current 93.9 The Ville host, Marques Maybin. Enjoy this. And again, rate and review it. Tweet at us. Let us know if you like it. And if you don't like it, I'll probably just ignore your comment. No, I'm kidding. If you don't like it, send me a tweet. Let me know, and I'll see what I can do to work on it. But talk to you later, guys. And again, enjoy this interview with Marques Maybin. All right, we welcome in a Louisville legend, a guy who is certainly well known in these parts for his incredible story, for his playing days, and now as a radio host at ESPN Louisville on 93.9 The Ville. You can listen to him 10 to 12 during the week with Steve Rummage. It's Marques Maybin. Marques, what's going on, man?
Been feeling good, man. Thanks for having me. Like I said, I'm enjoying watching you get your sea legs under you as well.
Well, we hit it off a few years ago, and I interviewed you. I wanted to write about you and your incredible story, and it's been fun watching you get into radio and find your purpose and find things that make you happy. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see where you are now.
No, it was definitely my your interview was my reintroduction back to kind of Louisville media. So I of course I appreciated it so much. And the only thing, listen, the only thing I would ask you not to do is tell me the date that we actually did that, because I'm going to feel so old and I'm going to be worried about how time just flies by. It's just thinking about it, like that was some years ago. And I was like, don't even think about how long ago that was.
No, we're like bourbon and wine. We age nicely as we get older.
That's what I'm hoping.
So, yeah, there you go. It does feel like forever ago, doesn't it?
It does.
But I know you spend every day talking about this, but give me your kind of your overview of where Louisville basketball is right now. Louisville men's basketball, I should say, is right now, and after this, with this offseason coming off the season they just had.
That's always one of the most difficult. A State of the Union is almost impossible right now for me in particular. Like I like to see the additions of the team. I mean, listen, with new assistant coaches, new players, I think we have a lot of young talent. And then I'm wondering about the sophomore, freshman to sophomore, window of like I guess I have more questions and more excitement than actual analysis. And I know that's like the most cliche cop out with the team, but yeah, like right now I'm just excited about the dust kind of settling from the time the season ends to now has been, I know, and as far as college basketball in general, everybody's kind of dealing with the hectic nature, but in particular, this team and staff changes, and we may be looking at some style changes as well. So like I said, it's more, my excitement is more anticipation than analysis, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is looking forward to seeing what type of team rolls out in November. What do you think of the additions? In addition, we know the signings, of course, with Ellis, Roosevelt Wheeler, and Mike James. I know we've been talking on ESPN Louisville about it. I had it in my newsletter that Ellis is going to be playing primarily the one. That's the position they're teaching him in the playbook and asking him to learn. We know Mike James has been asked to primarily focus on learning the two. And then you throw into the mix Jared West, Noah Locke, and Matt Cross, all new additions. What do you make of that group of 6 guys who are coming in?
I can speak about them as groups or individuals, but as group, if I were looking for like common characteristics of them as a group, I think they all have the traditional Louisville slight chip on their shoulder. You get a tweener label. If you ask anybody who's Denny Crum centric at Louisville, the word tweener was like the word you don't say to a Louisville player. It was just one of those things that, everybody feels like it hurt them in a draft. You could just dominate a conference, but you got tweener label on you. So I think there's tweener labels on a lot of these guys. I think it's that extra chip. I don't think any of the guys that we're bringing in were running from a situation or avoiding a situation. I think these guys coming in as a common theme, they are looking to prove something. They're going to this level because they say, I want to show people that I can play at that level. Or, or if or I'm going to go there because it's my opportunity to play against the best. It's funny. Even in Conference USA, we always had a top 5 schedule, in the nation. We always had a big time TV schedule. So there was some natural chip that everybody said, I want to go to Louisville because I want that schedule. I want to go play UCLA, North Carolina. My first 3 games were Illinois, Georgia Tech, maybe Speedy Claxton, Hofstra. It was just like my first 8 games was Purdue, Arkansas, Ole Miss, UCLA. It was insane, to be a Conference USA schedule, which coaches wouldn't dream of playing 12 of the top 10 teams in their first, 15 games, or 10 of the top 12 teams or something like that in their first 10 games of the year. So I think the chip on their shoulder and tweener labels are what kind of drives these guys as far as the similarity as the group.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate assessment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It like individuals, like I said, I don't know how deep you want to go down the nerdy rabbit hole of what I think about Noah Locke.
Let's hear it.
What's that?
I said, let's hear it. Let's get to it. Might as well tell us.
In general, where did I start? I think Ellis is the again prototypical, maybe not a pure point guard, but he's told he has the point guard body. You're gonna have to be all point guard. I think he has, and this is me just psychoanalyzing kind of the kids. Like you get out of a situation where you're under recruited by scoring. A lot of guys coming out of situations like Ellis that want to get noticed and want to get seen, can't get seen putting up 11 points and 8 assists, even though he probably could do it. But if you're, in the junior college level or something like that, unless you go 17 assists a game or something, it's hard to get noticed. It's funny. Again, we talked about this before. In the radius of Clarksville, Tennessee, to have a Marques Maybin, Sean Marion, and Trenton Hassel not even really hitting the recruiting boards, and just all of us kind of falling. I don't want to say trapped because it was fun to be a scorer, but you sometimes the rest of your game suffers because you got to get noticed by putting up a point total first and foremost. So I think the adjustment of that between he and Jared West, who can be relaxed more and run the team and do what the team needs to be an effective player. I think that's going to kind of determine who gets more of a Coach Mack nod, about running the team. And, like I said, they're 2 different styles, but one of them is going to be more comfortable, asserting themselves and being confident their way is right. So, when you talk about, locker room or, competition, off-season competition, I think that'll come down to it. I think Noah Locke has a 2 mentality, but he hears the same thing. You're a tweener. You're going to have to be able to run the point. Like I say, again, it's such a delicate balance between doing what you're good at and getting better at other things, and it's like, if you can, I think it's what plagued Josh Nickelberry. Naturally comes out a shooter, a 2 guard, he has 2 good point guards, but it's almost like he forgot that he could handle the ball because he was just kind of trying to play off of David Johnson and play off of Carlik Jones. So when he got it, he was just kind of, if his shot's not there or a 1-2 dribble pull up, he kind of, was, kind of lost in between. There's no opportunity to handle the ball. I guess it all kind of mixes together when we talk about new lineups. Late in the season, there was a moment where Quinn Zielinski got the basketball, and I think he was like calling for a point guard to come get it or something, and maybe, the defense took away the point guard. And I watched Q just dribble up the court, get it up the court instantly, 5-6 dribbles, really fast, really clean, right? And I remember thinking at that moment, okay, Q, if you could do this all this time and you haven't been putting the ball on the floor to get it up the court, this is a look in the mirror moment. Because, sometimes I'm like, okay, coach, are you getting guys to, are you letting guys, bring it up the court if they can? I noticed Jalen Withers started doing a little more, but like I said, it was like the last 2 or 3 games when I think Q did that. And I was just kind of like disappointed that, okay, if you were comfortable doing that all year and you just now started doing it, I'm just like, you wasted a lot of opportunities, having those abilities. So, and again, I'm speaking about recognizing these things, because when I played with Reese Gaines, it was kind of like that sometimes. Like, he's such a good player. You're just kind of trying to play off everybody that you kind of forget. Hey, I can bring it up and he can take that spot and you just kind of get used to. I've never liked people overemphasizing positions. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about a guy like I know we're supposed to start with newcomers, but I'm jumping around the board. When you talk about JJ Trainers or the Jalen Withers and people say undersized positions or for the position, I'm like, your undersized should be your advantage though, going the other way. Yes, you're undersized here. We can design a defense to help you here, but you got to take advantage of being undersized on this end. So, and on offense, if you're above 6'2", you're supposed to be able to score when you go to the basket or get fouled. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're a 2 or 3 or 4, you should be able to go to the basket. I'm thinking kind of that same thing with when you talk about Mike James. You should be able to get fouled. You're an athletic guy. Attack the basket. You should, I want them to kind of keep their youthful high school reckless abandon, when they come in. And I think they can all contribute immediately if they kind of keep the kind of gung-ho, nature to them and don't try to fit in around the guys that are currently, on the roster.
Is there anything that you think is missing from like you touched on some guys and what they can do and maybe some areas where they might need some work, but is there anything that's missing on this current roster? They do have 2 scholarships. If they wanted to use them, that they could use them. So if you're Chris Mack, what are you using those scholarships on if you think there is a need for it?
A transition, one-leg jumping athlete. A kind of a stick your head down, be the first guy out in transition. It's almost like a Tutu Atwell, a speed and athlete, a guy who can just really, really get the defense back. It keeps everybody from attacking the glass on you. Just one guy who can get out and finish. You know me, Jeff, I hate when people have to slow down to dunk the ball in transition. It drives me insane, So I think we need a good one leg. I'm sure you could think of his name, the Western Kentucky kid. Really could
Hollingsworth?
No, he's the scorer, but there's another one, right?
Yeah, I of course you asked me that. Now I can't think of it.
Yes,
I know you're talking about.
But here's my ranking. Like I said, a long one-legged jumper to just to open up my transition. Kind of just a real deal athlete. Probably one of those I would rank number 1. And number 2, the pure drought breaking scorer that we hate on our team. The guy that we know is going to shoot when he gets on the court. We know he's going to go to the basket. We know he's not going to pass. I would probably rank that guy as my number 2 guy that, the guy that, like I said, you cannot stand, when he's missing, but you absolutely love him. And you listen, the guy who causes Coach Mack a headache with his scoring talent, I would probably rank as the number 2 guy we need.
Okay. Interesting. Do you think that does Noah Locke get the closest to that of the guys on the current roster, you think?
Right now, I'd probably say he has the most aggressive scoring mentality. Mm. But I'm not sure about his first step.
Okay.
You know, a guy who can get away with just sticking his head down has a first step that no one can stay in front of without him either getting fouled or, you know, or just causing some commotion. So a guy with a first step, usually those out of sight scorers have a first step that can either get him fouled or get him to the line most times. So yeah, his attitude and demeanor, yes. I'm waiting to see if his first step is as crafty as it needs to be. When you look at a car leak, his rocker step and and his first wiggle step is what he gets around people, no matter what. And like I said, I would definitely be looking for a guy with a first step that he can get a clean shot off, anytime he needs to. So those are kind of things I'm looking for. Again, you could have him on your team. You're not sure, but if there's one guy out there, I say that I know he has either a first step or I know in transition, you need that guy to like a press breaker. Like Power 5 teams, you should not be able to get away with pressing Power 5 teams for more than a couple seconds. Sometimes you have your outliers, Florida State, so long and just incredibly long and incredibly athletic. But they are the 2 percentile of teams that should be able to press, recover, and play good defense. But outside of that, you should have some jumpers on the back line of your defense where most coaches should be afraid to press a Louisville or a Carolina, Duke, or anything like that. Most of those should end in, it should be 50% dunks minimum against the full court pressing team. Like I said. So again, I know you can go deep into the rabbit hole of what you would like to see. Like I said, your list is always endless when you're definitely a fan like me.
Yeah, I think Ellis is such an intriguing addition, and I know we've talked about him already, but I feel like he might give them, and obviously Carlik Jones is all ACC, and I think he's quicker than he gets credit for, but he seems to really thrive in half court situations, and maybe could have played a little bit more explosively getting out on the break and everything, but we know Chris Mack explained we didn't have the depth that we wanted to be able to get out and run for 40 minutes.
Right.
And I feel like Ellis has a quickness and speed to him that Louisville did not have really on any of its rosters the last couple of years. Darius Perry is probably athletically the closest guy to what I think Ellis gives them. So I'm very intrigued to see what he looks like helping them get out and run. It's
not his running. It's, are we going to force JJ and Jalen to run with them? Is going to, that's going to make all the difference for Ellis. Is he going to have a running mate who is as aggressive to get out in transition, somebody instinctually that knows to get it off the board and be there, kind of he's going to need another speed guy. I mean, again, we have the talent to be faster and finish, but we're going to have to develop that mentality. And the Ellis, I kind of feel like I shortchanged him when I was talking about the first step, because again, his more transitional first step and kind of getting you backwards. But I didn't qualify him as a half court scorer. I kind of put him in transition score. So, when I was saying half court scorer, first step, go get me a bucket guy, it's a little different from transition scorer guy. Go get me a bucket. I do think Ellis needs somebody who is lightning, who is also a finisher. Again, once you get maybe a JJ Trainer, once you get a Mike James, to just stick their head down and be there at the end of the transition, then I think Ellis will definitely flourish.
Yeah, and I also think that Jalen Withers can get there, slimming down a little bit and playing the forward spot instead of playing center. What do you want to see out of Sam Williamson this offseason? What needs to change or improve? He had a great second half of the year. I mean, really was probably the most consistent outside of Carly Jones, was the most consistent player on the team in ACC play. What's the next step for him, do you think, this offseason?
The next step for Sam Williamson is lower body strength, balance. We know he has a nice floater, but because he shoots a floater and drifters, a lot of defenders get away with pushing him, so he looks under control, but he's still getting, like, he's missing opportunities to get fouled, right? Mm-hmm. So his efficiency with the ball could be so much better getting fouled if he played with a lower center of gravity. I'd like to see him, kind of pump fake and jump into players. Actually, when you say when we have the conversation about what the team is missing, if this is the team we go with, in an ideal world, I say Sam has the potential to be my missing link. Offensively, like I don't necessarily want Sam to pass, but again, when he attacks, he's going to have to get his body lower. He's going to have to get, a stronger base, because that's the only way he can, like, utilize his size, utilize his strength, is if he just plays lower so he can kind of explode out of his stances. And that's the only way he's going to be able to use his athleticism and all that good stuff. So lower center of gravity, his first steps, I want him to be stronger. Like I said, I don't want him to get road, when he's driving, he ends up 5 feet further than he should be, so if I were going to come up with a word for Sam, I'd say probably, or two phrases, lower center of gravity and efficiency around the basket. Like, he's tall enough to get fouled, and Jeff, nobody uses the glass. He has so many, listen, he has so many scoring opportunities at the angles, and I'm just like, with his rotation, he would be such a great scorer if he just added efficiency to his game. Used it, like, he gets to the angles instead of floating, stop and get a shot. So yeah, that is like the official old man Marcus, Coach Crum, Coach Wooden. If you ask a lady friend of mine, she's like, I don't know anything about basketball, but I know everybody needs to use the glass, and that's all I know. So yeah, anybody sitting around me, they would hear me say, use the glass unlimited. But the efficiency of Sam Williamson, I think, would skyrocket with simple things like lower center of gravity, use the glass, pump fake, and jump into people instead of avoiding the contact, which might be kind of a new style change. But when I watch Final Fours, I still see a lot more using the glass, a lot more jumping into people to get fouled. Like at the finish line, I see the traditional teachings, but a lot of the, majority of regular college basketball, I still see a lot of, kind of poor habits of avoiding the contact and stuff like that. But so around Elite Eight, Final Four time, I feel reinvigorated watching the sport, because I can tell that the fundamentals still get you to the finish line, even though it might not get you on SportsCenter.
Yeah, and to your point about adding strength too, I think that in addition to all of those things, which are all perfectly valid points, obviously, it'll help him expand his shooting range too and be more consistent as a three-point shooter. That was something that I know, like Evan Daniels and Jeff Borzello and some of the guys who follow recruiting talked about with him, was his mechanics are good. He's got great form. He's a good shooter, obviously the dynamite mid-range shooter, but he's unreliable from three because he pushes himself a little bit more when he's shooting from out there. Mm-hmm. And if he has that strength, lower body strength, upper body strength, both, I mean, it's whole body strength, that would really help him quite a bit. And if he adds, he doesn't have to be incredible. if he shoots 33%, I mean, he
Right.
changes his game if he has that 3-point shooting touch as a threat as part of his offensive game.
Yeah, 100%. Like lower body, like his upper physique is strong enough, but I think the strength conversation is almost like the position conversation, where you can have the look of the muscle, but I mean, this the wiry guys who are tough are some of the strongest people you ever played against. It's just you can be slim and in great shape and have a strong core and rear end and really and kind of hold your ground just as good as anybody. Like I said, I don't like when people get a little too top heavy, thinking get stronger means get more muscles up here.
Yeah.
But again, I do understand it because I fell in love with the curls and I fell in love with the bench press. So it's like I can know all these things, but it's hard to judge some of the kids because once you start seeing yourself in the mirror, you're really just looking at your chest. You're never looking at how big your calf muscles are getting or your quads. You just, people tell you strength and you think bench press, pecs and dips and all those things like that. But it's really core, thighs, conditioning. That's where your real strength is going to help you, keep guys out of the paint, keep your balance and stuff like that. So yeah, those are always fun things to watch. And it's just like some of those mistakes you almost have to watch people make and just say, I get it, young fella.
Well, that's a perfect transition. I want to talk to you a little bit about your memories of your playing days. And, we always enjoy chatting about Coach Crum and being around him. I mean, Denny is just the ultimate, there's so many stories with him. It's incredible, the different stories with him. I know you're around Scotty D a lot. Give me your first and foremost, let's break the ice here. Give me, if you're at a party and somebody is like, Marques, I want your favorite Denny Crum story. Do you have one that you go to? Is there one that's immediately in the holster that you can pull out that you can deliver?
This is the one that it took me to where I am now. I won't count the years. It took me to this point to even feel remotely comfortable telling this story out loud because again, I am hyper protective of everything about my program. You know what I'm saying? So even the smallest thing, I don't like to see spun into, anything else, but it is funny. And it's, and I realize as an adult, it's a lot more normal than I thought as a young man. So the way you phrase that question is perfect. So my Puerto Rico shootout. This is my first real game action when I was a freshman. Okay, I remember that the hotel we were staying at in Puerto Rico, you had it's kind of casino / hotel a little bit, and if anybody knows, Coach Crum is, he does not mind,
He dabbles.
Sitting down at the table and doing a little Texas Hold'em or something like that, So young Marques had just, I don't know if it was after the second game or the first game, but me in particular, if anybody knows me for 25 years, I don't have the long night sleep. I have two, I pretty much operate on 2 naps or something like that instead of, like 4 hours. So I have the reputation of not sleeping, basically, to general people. So yeah, it was nothing to be on a Louisville campus. If you come through at 3 a.m. on a nice night, I'm sitting right on the bench just watching who's coming in and out of campus, and I'm just kind of, I got awkward hours. I always had awkward hours. So of course, in Puerto Rico, I had a great game in my first game, right? I had the Stuart Scott said my name in the opening of Sports Center in my first game, so I am on cloud 13. There's no way I'm going to be able to sleep I just want to. get through this tournament and get back home just because it's like that happened too fast. Like it was supposed to take, 3 years for me to get a Sports Center opening. Okay, so either after that first night or after the second night, 3 a.m, I'm up, whatever. So I end up venturing down the hallway, down into the lobby, right over kind of into the casino area. And I'm just kind of, just walking through and nobody's stopping me. So I don't even know if like in Puerto Rico, is it an 18 gambling rule or, like I said, I'm just kind of like walking around. And then I'm just looking around like a kid in a candy store. I'm looking, I don't gamble or anything. And I look right beside me. I look down and it's Coach Crum. And I'm just like, my heart, just like, I was like, I'm going to get kicked off the team. Like, I'm done, Jeff. Like, I'm done. I'm either suspended. They're going to sit. I mean, that moment, Jeff, I died on the inside, right? And it was one of those, you've seen the Homer Simpson meme where he tries to like creep back into the bush. Yeah. I was just frozen solid for that second. And I was dying on it. I had already thought about how much suspension, how much trouble I would get into. And he looked at me and he was happy to see me. To me, when I think about his eyes, they didn't even register that I wasn't supposed to be up at 3 a.m. or he didn't care at all. He was just kind of like, hey, like, what you up to? You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, like, what do you mean? What am I up to? Like, I'm just walking around and like, he just said a couple words and he went back to his hand. And I was like, yeah, I'm just looking around. And I think I can imagine if I had an iPhone watch at the time that measured my heart rate, I'm sure I didn't go to sleep. If that happened at 3 a.m, I probably didn't go to sleep until 15 minutes before we were supposed to go to breakfast or something. Like the sun probably came up. We got 7:15 breakfast, 6:42. I probably just closed my eyes for a wink. And then they were probably like, hey, breakfast time. But yeah, not just that being a story of running into him at, like I said, the wee hours of the morning, and he's just sitting there. But again, I'll never forget that he was happy, he just like was generally happy to see me, what I'm saying? And just it kind of reminded me of, being a kid at my grandma's house because she hosted card night. And when I would just come walking around the corner, she just looked happy to see me. Yeah. Just kind of like, hey, how you doing? So it just reminded me of that. And I felt comfortable with him, for the rest of my time here at Louisville, just off of that exchange. Like, like I said, he didn't even think about what is my 18-year-old freshman doing in the casino part of this at this time of the morning. So yeah, I do that sticks out like completely. And wow. Like I said, I can't imagine nowadays, him being in the casino in the wee hours of in Puerto Rico shootouts. It's like, oh my God. So yeah, that's probably awesome. What just comes to mind.
That's absolutely awesome. And I'm not surprised because I mention it all the time, and I'm sure people are annoyed that I keep mentioning it, but one of my favorite stories that I wrote at The Athletic was I went to Freedom Hall with Denny, and I basically just said, Denny, we're going to spend an hour. I know you got to – it was the day of a regular Louisville game, and I said, I know you got to get to dinner and then go to the game, but I just want to be in Freedom Hall and walk around for an hour with you and just tell me what comes to mind, right?
Yep.
And we're walking, we kind of walked around and there was so much good stuff. I mean, it was incredible, all the good stuff. And we got to that hallway where there's all those plaques along the wall. And I believe it's a Hall of Fame, an athletics Hall of Fame. And he's pointing people out. And Marques, they were not people like, oh, I coached against him and my team beat his team. It was not like, I was like sharing recruiting trips with this guy. No, it was literally every single guy who he beat either in poker or in golf. And it was incredible. He was like, oh, Tom Smith, me and Bart Johnson beat him in golf. And then, oh, this guy used to smoke him at poker. I mean, it was hilarious. Like it was one by one, just all these guys he had destroyed.
No, listen, it again, It's the I forget the particular poker player. Rounders, one of my favorite movies. They make a reference to you can shear sheep many times, but skin them only once, or something like that. That reminds me of Coach Crum, of just him just learning people over the course of time, and just like his computer bank is like, most of us are USB. He is external hard drive. He puts it in the back of his mind every little bit. And again, it takes 30 years of knowing him to know, to understand how deep his memory bank, his information data collection bank is. So I mean, I imagine just dealing with players and dealing with so many, situations, like his recall for moments is just like it takes you a long time to realize that about him. People who have known him 10 years don't realize how smart he is till year 40. It's like, yeah, like, I mean, but it, but it takes you a while to like I said, your story kind of gets probably deeper and deeper, into your brain, and you're like, wow, like I've met a lot of people, and that conversation was it's his competitive nature and his recollection, of his situational recollection is awesome. So yeah, I totally can relate to that.
Yeah, and I asked him, like, because he was talking about golfing and poker, and I'm sure there was like tennis and bowling in there and all these different things, and obviously basketball. And I said, Denny, do you have any general guess of what your all-time win-loss record is as a competitor, just in general, outside of basketball, in golf and poker and all these things? You go, oh, I reckon I didn't lose very many. He's got that swagger, the trash talk. But I've told people this before. This is not a new story to people, but I don't know if you've heard this, but at that same day as we were leaving, he's like, all right, I got to go to dinner. And he got about halfway back across the old court, or at least where the court was supposed to be. There was not a floor down at that time. And he turned back and he pointed and said, that's where Milt sat on his official visit. And he pointed to this exact spot, which would have been one of the floor seats at Freedom Hall. So that touches exactly on what you're talking about. This incredible recall of things and very specific detail.
Oh yeah, yeah. Again, it's situational as well. Like it comes to him because he's almost like he operates on deja vu time. Like he literally has been here before, and again, drove me crazy as a young man, because if you're familiar with Louisville, Marquette is the alley-oop. For all the athletes that he has had on his team to have only a couple of alley-oop plays, right? And I played with teams with 5, 6 guys with 40-inch verticals and up, and for you to have to wait until the perfect time where we need a bucket for him to call this play, but it never didn't work. It never didn't work because he saved, that is like his information. He saved it until I thought about that the other day. I don't know if you saw this, and this is totally, you're gonna definitely have to edit this part out. The other day, I saw a video of Andre Agassi.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it before. When he's talking about going against Boris Becker, he said nobody had a serve like Boris Becker. He said I went through hours and hours of video, and he said I couldn't do anything with him. He just had an awesome serve. He out wide or up the middle during pressure points. He said, after watching all these hours of tape, he said, I noticed he had a little tick where his tongue just touched the middle of his lip when he was going up the middle, and it went to the side, just a quick flicker like a lizard.
Yeah,
it went out.
Insane.
It went out to the side when he was going to kick it out wide. And he said the tough part wasn't returning the serve from that point on. He said the tough part was waiting and holding on to that information and not letting him know that he was giving away his serve, right?
Unbelievable.
And he says years and years later, he said he's having a beer with them at Oktoberfest, right? And he says, of course they're old men now. He says, I tell him, he said, did you know you flick your tongue, when you serve up the middle and blah, blah, blah. So he says, Boris Becker almost fell on the floor, right? Just kind of like died about that. He said, I promise you, he said, I used to go home. I used to tell my wife, it's like he's reading my mind, so he was like, for all them years, he was so frustrated with Agassi, you know what I'm saying? But again, the point is having those athletes, having all that ability to go, we could alley-oop all day if we wanted to, but when somebody figures out how to stop our alley-oop, it's going to be hard to deal with. But he knew that was one thing he could just tuck away, clear out the back. Listen, we're up to 42 seconds. We need this bucket to put the pressure on them. Then he calls it, and it's like, and we have to not give it away. Because, sometimes, you have the tendency to, he calls your play, you want to just dart out there and sit at your spot and wait for everybody. You want to like hurry up, get everybody on the, and sometimes coaches would recognize if a guy was excited, like, okay, our point guard would call a play or something. And if one of the other guys was trying to point people in the right position, their coach would say, watch that guy, because he's way too involved in the setting up of this play. Or they might call it, they might try to call a timeout or, just do anything to stop it. So yeah, as players, you kind of recognize the little idiosyncrasies that I know something's going down with this guy, because he's doing way too much talking to not be the point guard on this play. So yeah, it's fascinating to see, to, like I said, to go from, social media sports to real detailed intricacies of sports, so and I always feel sorry for the coaches and the players who have all this information in their brain and they get criticized by look now guys like me, it's
worse when it's worse when it's guys like me. At least you played.
No, but again, I still enjoy it because it's still the entertaining versus the like I said, the intricacies and stuff like that. So it's multiple different worlds that I like to enjoy watching.
All right, so I'm going to get you out of here on this. I got rapid fire for you. I got 3 rapid fires for you. The first one is, who is your all-time favorite player that you played with? It could be high school. It could be a kid you like playing with on the playground when you were a kid. It could be college. Who is your all-time favorite teammate?
All-time favorite teammate would be most likely Tony Slater. The reason I say Tony Slater is because I lived in Wiesbaden, Germany when I was, probably my 9-year-old through 12-year-old, roughly. I lived in Wiesbaden, Germany. Military state, my dad's military brat. The local bases would get together and of course have youth league, what kind of YMCA equivalent or whatever. There was this real tiny guy on the other team. He was at Mainz, Germany. That was kind of the other rival. It was the rival base, and the bantams would play against the bantams, and the teenagers play. Okay, so there was this guy, tiniest guy you ever seen. Like, he did not look like he was old enough or should be, but again, he was the Tutu Atwell because he played football, and so when we played football, he'd be killing us, and basketball, he was just so fast, and he was lightning, right? And so my senior year, headed into the summer of my senior year, I'm in gym class at Northwest High School in Clarksville, Tennessee. I'm in gym class, and I'm goofing around because everybody's like doing roll call, and I'm probably the only guy that's not sitting in line. Just, you're in gym class. Of course, the basketball coach is your coach, right? And think about it. I'm on a corner of a whole auditorium, an entire, we're catty corner, right? So I see that guy walk in, Jeff, and you got to think, this is 7 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that guy. I'd never talked to him before. I just played against him in Germany. And I look across that gym and I watch him walk in that gym, and I'm just locked in, and people are looking at me, and I'm just like, no. No. And he's kind of giving me that look across, and he ends up talking to the teacher, back in the day, sign up for this class or whatever. He comes over to me and he says, "Your name Marques?" I'm like, hell yeah, I knew that was you. And so turns out, like, he ended up going, his kid, and he could really play. And he's like, he said he was on Fort Campbell, because we're stationed technically in Fort Campbell. He said he was in Fort Campbell, and he said they were saying that there's some kid named Marques that that goes to school across the border. He can play. He was like, "That's you," what I'm saying? And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me."
Crazy.
So he ends up at the school, and we make our state tournament run together.
Wow.
Like, with him being, he's 5'7", 5'8", max. But yeah, like I said, I've YouTubed some clips of him, just awesome point guard. So that story, just like, you couldn't make that
that's
up.
Crazy. That's insane.
So, and that's exactly what we needed. We needed a lightning point guard, because we were talented, but to deal with Sean Marion and Trenton, they're on the same team, and you're like, yeah, we need something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You needed that curveball. You needed that something different.
100%. So yeah, of all the teammates, just that story and that magical ride probably made him my favorite teammate.
Okay. If you had to pick just one game of yours that you could watch, and it was no other, you can never watch any other basketball game again, but you can watch this one game that you played in, which one would you pick?
It's rapid fire. Oh man, one game you could watch over and over again. Golly. Oh man, I don't know. Maybe Sub-State High School Pearl Cone. They had Ron Slay for Tennessee on that team. John Henderson, the defensive end, the Hall of Fame defensive end, John Henderson.
Yeah.
They had all these guys. It was Pearl Cone High School. They had all these guys, and it was one of those movie-esque, where the little country Clarksville school going into the heart of Nashville, at a magnet school. It's like, how you would say going into Central when they're at their peak, and you're just like, you don't have a chance. I'm the tallest guy on my team, that. And the reason I probably put that in is because it had the Rocky feel, to where they were really like booing and jeering. And by the time we left that gym, it was kind of like, okay, y'all can play.
You won them over, yeah.
Yeah, just winning to me, winning over in a road crowd was probably the best feeling in sports. The ooh and ah that you make on an opponent's, places. Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite things.
Wow. Okay, that's a good answer. That's was unexpected. All right, last one. This might be the toughest one out of all of them, especially for you. Your favorite dunk that you ever had? Because I know, like, good dunkers are famous for dunks, and like there's specific ones, like Vince Carter. Of course, we know all of his famous ones. But if you said, Vince, what's your favorite dunk? He might not say any of the highlight reel dunks. So what is yours? Even if it may not be a highlight reel dunk for some people who know you from your Louisville days. But what's your favorite all time?
Again, you have to quantify these, because this, like, one dunk I might have jumped higher on this one, and one dunk may have, something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, my favorite dunk is also the most disappointing story of a dunk, right? There is the video. I I believe Kent Taylor tracked down this video of this dunk,
wow.
right? And the reason this dunk didn't exist is because it was the dunk against Kentucky and Jamal McGlure, right? It happened right at the beginning of the game, which means the other game hadn't switched over from CBS, right? and the build up to it was my brother just gave me I'll give you, I don't even know what it was, but my brother was just like, if you go catch that big dude for Kentucky, I'll give you, this or that or something, right? And I remember I dunked on him early because I told him I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna catch him, right? I'm telling you, I'm gonna catch him. And he's like, okay, if you do it, blah blah. So I don't even remember. Was that when the game was? I think we ended up losing that game, right? And I remember calling him and, kind of talking about the game or whatever. He was like, you stunk it up here. You were great. You were good here, whatever. And I was like, but I did catch your boy, and he was like, when? And I'm like, what do you mean when? Right? And I'm like, you didn't see that? Like, what do you mean? I was like, I did it like 2 minutes into the game. And he was like, nah, I didn't see that. So then that's when I found out the game hadn't switched over. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot. No, so nobody saw it. Nobody saw it until probably 2016 or 17, when Kent Taylor was able to track it down because somebody was like under the basket, was, obviously doing, they still had the cameras up and running, but it didn't make CBS. And I was just like, this is just the worst thing. This is just, but it was my favorite because it was like my called shot moment in basketball.
Absolutely.
So that's probably the best answer I could give on that one.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? I can't think of a better note to end on. That is absolutely awesome. So go track down that dunk on the internet if you haven't seen it out there.
Right. Listen, it's posted on my Twitter. You would have to scroll back immediately because it's one of I usually clean off my Twitter wall every once in a while. It's one of those dunks that stays on the Twitter.
I respect it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Marques, I appreciate, as always, a chance to chat with you. It's always fun. And keep up the great work on 93.9 and appreciate the chance to chat with you tonight.
Same to you, Jeff. Keep up the good work, the Lou City work, the radio work. You're doing a great job. Keep it up and much success in your future endeavors, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.